Okay, namaste. This is the second part of the talk And So It Begins, which is the third part of the podcast. This is the second part of the third part of the podcast, if that makes sense. And where I left off last time was the block Surapadman was a hindrance. So I was describing, narrating the background of the origin of the bell and sort of political ramifications between the Aaiyanists and the Kalaya and the Tantric Aaiyanists. So I'll just continue on reading. There's a few more paragraphs left, but it's good to split up in two sections so that you can absorb it and I can talk about things without it turning into a 2-hour podcast, for example. Anyway. Okay, I'll start reading now then. If we step back further in time for a moment, it was said that the ancient Dravidian priestess Seer Janigan Nyana, so that's the Dravidian priestess Seer Janigan Nyana. In the origin of the Vel, the text, the writing of Janigana is written Janiganyana, which is a particular, how can I put it, an Atmani reverence name for her. Other Aaiyanists, like the Ardha Aaiyanists or the Karikata school, which I sort of involve myself with, would say Janigana. But in the text it's pronounced in an ancient form and a more revered form of Janigan Nyana. And obviously the Dravidian seer is very famous, and you can read many of her texts and her predictions and whatnot in Dravidian Aiyani. There is a move to translate some of this into English, but obviously it's always slow going. So anyway, continuing on, the priestess, the seer, foretold 70,000 years beforehand that a champion would have the inner strength to defeat Surapadman. And as many Aayanists know, Seer Janigan Nyana was an oracle of limitless foresight and foretold Surapadman's arrival 20,000 years before Surapadman appeared. So this is Seer Janigan Nyana, 70,000 years before, which is 20,000 years before the story I'm going to narrate now, before Surapadman appeared. And she also, as well, foretold the esoteric knowledge concerning iron, the Kalaya instance as well, and other broad spiritual truths of importance. In this regard, Seer Janiganyana foretold Surapadman and also foretold the means on how to defeat Surapadman, including making a pact with his brother Tarak Kasura, which will be discussed later. There's many pronunciations of Surapadman. You can say Surapad, and the brother can be Tarak as well. There is another pronunciation, Tarak Asura, or there's many names for beings. Tarak Kusan as well is another name for the brother of Surapadman, Tarak Kusan. In the origin of the Vel, they try to keep it simple by having single names for beings or protagonists in the story. But if you read another Aayanist text, or if you look at other Hindu books, you may find that Tarak Asura, Surapadman, Janiganyana, for example, would be Janigana, Tarak, Surapad. Yes, so just have it in the back of your mind. So you may hear the same word in the same context and think, oh, that's someone else I've read in the origin of the Vel, but they're the same people. So obviously we're sort of translating ancient names into English, and Yes, and in English you have one name for someone, but in Hinduism there's many names for the same person. For example, Murugan, Iron, for example, anyway. So anyway, this story is supposed to be kept simple for children, but so I'll just continue reading. So we're talking about the seer. So in other words, she devised a Dravidian scientific method to find such a person that would defeat the bloc. Okay. So reading next. Please note, the Dravidian scientific method was a means in ancient and modern times to contact distant dimensions and beings to elicit secret information. Seer Janiganyana determined via the gods and asuras that in order to defeat the demon Surapadman, one had to be the complete being, a being capable of oneness with Brahman. Total completeness in this ancient era was determined by 3 criterion. They'd have to be strong in battle, fully immersed in Dravidian Aaiyyanist magic, and one in meditative arts. And when I say Dravidian Aaiyyanist magic, obviously I mean Dravidian Aaiyyanist science, which is the same word, an English word that is describing something that's not quite either. So science and magic. For hundreds of years, there were individuals who had mastered the arts of combat, magic, and meditation. Yeah, and it's got the ancient words for this in the text. So if you look at the text, you can read Ankar Mian, combat, meditation, Avarayan, and magic is Otik Ku Kayan. Otik Ku Kayan is the magic. And these words are ancient words as well. So obviously we're talking something 50,000 years ago. So anyway, the 3 arts, combat, magic, and meditation, there were individuals who possessed some of them, but none who possessed all 3, and none who could penetrate the veil that separated Brahman from our material realm, and thus fulfill the basic requirements to defeat the bloc Surapadman. Let's just step back for a second. As I'm reading names in English in this text, I always think of them in Dravidian irony, and I have to be mindful not to give my own Karekata version of the name and try to read it faithfully from the script here, because if I don't want to be sectarian basically, and the origin of the vowel was discussed between many different groups of what should be the correct translation as presented to you in this text. So I have to be careful when I say the Dravidian irony term not to read it quickly and then give the Karekata term, which is not sanctioned basically by the Iron Foundation. So I would say something like Akamian for the magic, for the combat, sorry, but it should be Ankamian, Akamian, and Otik Ku Kayan, or Otik Kayan, as I would say is a Karekata pronunciation. There's sort of, what's the word I'm looking for in English? Accent is too strong a weaker word. It's actually a slightly different word in some cases. And same with Tarak Sura, you'd say, or Surapadman, or Surapad, and Janaganaya. So if you're listening to me and also having the text next to you as I'm reading it, and I give another pronunciation, a Karekata or even an Atmanic pronunciation of the word, that's just have it in your mind that I'm reading it in English, and I'll try to read it directly as the Iron Foundation have set it to be, but I might just enter Dravidian irony mode and just start talking Dravidian irony. But anyway, so that's the thing about the words. So obviously words are very important in Aaiyyanism. Yantras are more important, the symbols are, but the words also have a resonant meaning. So it depends on what you're attuned to. And the more you get into Aaiyyanism, if you follow different schools, your particular path may lead you to slight variations of sounds, as you can also have slight variations in yantras and symbols. But if someone listening to this from new, they'll probably think, what am I talking about? But as you get further into Aaiyyanism, you'll understand what I'm saying. You'll become more resonantly attuned to the method you're doing. So, and sometimes when you fight against your own resonance, it's sort of jarring. I've mentioned this before in previous podcasts, that sometimes when I read something out in English and then translate in my mind into Dravidian irony, but I'm also mindful of saying the correct irony word rather than my own sectarian words. I wouldn't say sectarian, but my own path, my own karikata, atmani, and mixtures of different schools I've obviously grown up with. So let's continue on the story. So Seer Janaganiyar was and is an important figure in Dravidian Aaiyyanism. Before the concepts of Aaiyyanism were fully formulated, Seer Janaganiyar foretold Arun, Surapadman, the attempted tantric binding of Brahman, which is another story, and other tumultuous events in the Aaiyyanist historical calendar. The client incident was also a tantric binding of Brahman, attempted one, but there was another one which is not to be mentioned for only those who know. Maybe I've said too much. Maybe I'll cut this out from the podcast. Actually, I will be uploading this podcast, so they won't be able to do that anymore. But yes, I'll make it sanctioned later, because we shall see. Anyway, so the attempted tantric binding of Brahman and other tumultuous events in the Aaiyyanist historical calendar. She was a seer, but it was also said that she was an incarnation of Parvati and thus revealed the truth, but also masked the truth. So she revealed the truth and also masked the truth, hid the truth. And as many Aaiyanists know, the prophecies of Janaganiyar may reveal the truth of an event in the future, but may also mask the true reality of what will come to pass. So you reveal the truth, but also mask the truth. It's a paradox. Like many things in Aayanism, you do something and then not do something. Thus it was in this case, and as everyone knows who's read the story, you know what I'm talking about. When Seer Janaganiyar revealed the method of how a champion would be chosen to defeat Surapadman, she was telling the truth and also masking it at the same time. One must bear this in mind as one immerses yourself in this narrative. So that's almost the end of the story. That's not the story, the whole story. Just of this section, this small section of the paragraph. So having in your mind that Seer Janaganiyar revealed the method of how a champion would be chosen to defeat Surapadman, and she was telling the truth but also masking the truth. And there's a note at the end of this paragraph. It was said that a being that was capable of destroying the block, Atekkayan, is called Turappuyan. So loosely translated as the instrument. So the instrument will defeat the block, i.e. the tool needed to unlock or break the doors of the ego self and become one with all. So Turappuyan is the key, or the instrument, or the tool to smash the lock. Atekkayan. This concept of Turappuyan and Atekkayan is quite interesting in Aayanism. There's always something, and then you're merging things together. When you travel when you create yantras to go to dimensions, locus or talas, you will understand this sort of unlocking mechanism. And so this it sort of skims on in the text here, but it's one of the more fundamental sort of thought processes that goes in this idea. So some people call them Tudapayans, who are quite good at yantras and resonance. So they're like they're an instrument. So in summary, that's the end of this chapter then. So in summary, I've talked about the seer, Janaganyana. I've talked about the three sort of arts of combat, magic, and meditation. I've also touched on words and their pronunciations. I can't even say that. But their pronunciations and in English. But if you hear another Hindu or another Aaiyyanist say the same Dravidian Aarya term, they may have their own twang, their own sort of accent on the word, or maybe even have a shortened word or a longer word, or like Janagana, as I would say, rather than the full Janaganyana, the more formal, ancient form of that term, the more sort of reverent term. But if you are Aaiyanists and you remember your previous incarnations, then the reverence for the seer is more familiarity, because you remember your previous incarnations, and therefore the sort of the doffing of the cap to some ancient person is less concentrated, because you remember them from your previous incarnation. That's why people, the Arduous may say Janagana, because it's like they know her, they were followers of her, and other individuals as well. So, what else have I talked about in this podcast? Yeah, so that's the end of this section then. The section entitled "And So It Begins," and it shall begin more in earnest next time. What can I say about this? Yeah, so if you like this podcast, if you like this knowledge, if you like Aayanism, do support us via the Patreon site. Do subscribe. If you can't support us, that's fine actually. It's actually a means to read out people who are real people, because people like real people will donate $1 rather than some spam bot who will be emailing us every 5 minutes, asking us to. What was the last email I got? It was if I wanted to print some printed T-shirts or something, or no, it was no, it doesn't matter. It was some sort of business venture that someone was trying to get me involved in, or the Iron Foundation for some reason, which had nothing to do with what we're doing. What else is there? Yeah, so support us on the Patreon. Email info@iron.org, or put all this in the description, obviously. Join the Iron Foundation and you'll get free books and free stuff. And subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. So we almost hit 100 people. So once we do that, we'll be able to have a dedicated URL in YouTube, so which will be quite nice, rather than some sort of random mix of letters and names, and letters and numbers. So that's the end of the podcast. So I'll be back in a few weeks' time with the next chapter of this, and also I'll mix and match, as I said before, with other readings about Aayanism, and also other new Aayanist news, and maybe some more Talo and Loku readings. There's been a sort of an ask by some people to have more Yantras, so I might do that sooner rather than later. And people are also asked to be put onto the prayer list, so I'll amend people's names and put them in the prayer list as well. And so we'll add you to our list, and when we do our prayers, you'll get that positive energy. So I shall sign off now by pressing the button. Bye.